don't we go ahead? Welcome. My name is Keith Molenaar, and this is our National Academy of Construction Ask Me Anything webinar. Really excited to be here with you tonight. I'm a NAC member and a professor here at the University of Colorado Boulder. The National Academy of Construction was established to recognize our industry leaders. An important purpose of the Academy is to provide a link between our past and future leaders in the construction industry. You are all our future leaders, so welcome tonight. We've established this NAC AMA to help transfer knowledge to you, our next generation. So the format's really simple. Our speakers make a very short presentation about their career and a little bit of their perspective on the industry. And if you've not already, please do email your questions to NACAMA, all one word, NACAMA@colorado.edu. We will read those questions and our guest will answer those. And at the end, if you've sent in your question, you'll be eligible for a scholarship of $500, which we will announce the winner at the end of the presentation. So I couldn't be more thrilled to introduce to you one of my mentors, Cliff Schexnayder. Some of you may know him through his textbooks in some of your classes, but Dr. Schexnayder was an eminent scholar at the Dell E. Webb School of Construction at Arizona State University from 1994 to 2003. He has a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering as well as a Master of Science in Civil Engineering, both from Georgia Tech, go Ramblin' Rick, and a PhD from Purdue University. Dr. Schexnayder served in the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers beginning in 1967. And in his last assignment with the Corps, he was Executive Director of the Directorate of Military Programs in the Office of the Chief of Engineers. From that post, he entered academia. He began his teaching career at Louisiana Tech University and has taught construction engineering at Arizona State, as I said before. He's also taught as a visiting professor and also online from Virginia Tech, the U.S. Air Force Academy, Universidad de Piura, and Ricardo Palma Universidad in Peru. He spent quite a bit of time in Peru, and also with the Israeli Institute of Technology. Dr. Schexnayder also has some private sector experience, again as a chief engineer and officer in the corporation of Nello L. Tier Company in Durham, North Carolina. In 2012, he was honored with the American Society of Civil Engineers Outstanding Projects and Leader Award in the area of education. He's co-authored 2 textbooks, Construction Planning and Equipment, which I've used for years, and Methods in Construction Management Fundamentals. Construction Management Fundamentals. So Cliff is married to Judy and has 2 daughters, 1 daughter and 2 sons. So Cliff, Dr. Schexnayder, we're really excited to have you here. And I know you wanted to go through a little bit of a presentation before we start to answer questions. So we'll go ahead and set you up.
Well, I'm going to give you all a little rundown. He told you these things, but wait a minute. Okay, here we go. Whoa, too fast. House manager, student chapter, ASCE, swimming team, Ramblin' Rec Parade. A lot of the questions that come in have to do with how do you succeed, how do you find mentors. You have to participate. And I was very fortunate to have some good people at Georgia Tech that had me participating. Okay, let's go to the next. There we go. The Army took me. They sent me, I guess I had less than a year or something like that. And they sent me to Thailand to build roads. You see the conditions we were working in. After that, they sent me to the Waterways Experiment Station and we were working on the Safeguard missile system. I had dark hair then. But again, those opportunities, the Army trains you to be a lifelong learner is the terminology we use. And so by being in the service, I went to the advanced course, I went to the CNGS, the general officers, I went to the Air College. But besides that, I took a lot of courses you do them online. In those days, we had to mail them in, and we'd read a book or we'd read what the material was, and we said, now that's formal coursework. But some of the other things, let's go to the next one, please. I got off of active duty and I went to work for a contractor, and we were building a new interstate highway, Interstate 12, from Covington to Slidell, Louisiana. We also had some of the jobs over at Hammond. And again, even there, I would participate in like ASCE and those activities, and my boss would say, what's the payoff? I couldn't tell you at any particular meeting there was a payoff, but many times when I had a question about geotech matters, bridges, whatever else, I knew the right person to call from participating in those activities. Next, please. Also, when I was down there building that highway, I was in the National Guard. I was the commanding officer of B Company, and then what they call the operations officers of the S3. And again, I'm making friends. I'm being encouraged to continue my education in the military side right there, but still, it's habit for me. Next. Louisiana Tech University, they started me out since I had an Army experience. They put me in as an associate professor. I worked with this AGC student chapter. I changed to a part-time professor, went back to my old company. I'm working in the home office and I'm estimating major jobs. After that, I went and opened the Granite Construction Company estimating office in Texas. And again, they paid for me to go to activities and meetings, but the payoff over the years, I can't tell you. And so I highly encourage you to don't just join ASCE or transportation research, participate on the committees. Next. Through that participation, I got into writing this book with Robert Purefoy, because somebody said, hey, go sit next to this Purefoy at a meeting one time, an ASCE meeting, and I got to talking to him. I said, if you ever needed help, here I am. And it was several years, maybe 5, 6 years later, he said, hey, I need some help. I want to rewrite the book. And that's how I got started writing books. Keith Molenaar, who's the speaker here today, he sat down to me, next to me on a bus at a highway engineers meeting. And that's how we got together and got started on a lifelong learning experience. Next. Through friendships, same thing. I wound up being asked to go down to Peru, teach at Universidad de Piura, teach at Ricardo Palma. That didn't just come out of the blue. I mean, I got the email out of the blue, will you come teach? But friends had recommended me, friends that knew what I was doing. Same way with going to Tel Aviv, going to Haifa and teaching at the Technion. We moved up to Connecticut, and the very day we got there, I get an email from Boston, from Northeastern, will you come teach? Same thing with the University of New Haven, which was a little closer than Boston, because Boston was a 3-hour drive. Next. Participation in committees, participation in ASCE, Transportation Research Board. You meet people that will help you along the way. You meet people that will, you will learn from them, but you will also know which ones, when you have a question or a problem, who to ask, who to call up, who to email. I highly encourage you to participate. Join these committees and participate. Next. Transportation Research Board, several committees there. And again, that led to lots of other opportunities. Working on committees, you meet these people, they got a problem, they call you or you call them. Next. How'd it come out? We worked for the American Indian Museum on the Great Inca Road. It was an exhibit. I think it finally came down this year. Wound up, it's another thing about going to Peru and walking the road. But again, met lots of good people that have helped me in my career. I think the Imagination is down in the bottom of Manhattan in New York City. That exhibit and work is still going on. Keep going. Thank you. Next. Keith Molenaar, the other man speaking here, calls me up and says they got this earthquake. They need help down in Chile. And so now the State Department sends me to Chile after the Mao earthquake. Very interesting experience. Next. Keith Molenaar and myself and a guy named Stu Anderson at Texas A&M were doing some estimating work, and the next thing you know, the Panama Canal people want us to come down and review their costing. The people that we had worked with passed off our names and said, hey, these are the folks you need to call. You don't know when you do the work, but it pays off. It pays off. Next. And just have fun. I mean, you're going to work hard. Find a job you like, find a group of people you like, and go have fun. All right, test question number 1. I can't hear you.
Yep, sorry, I was enthralled in listening to your presentation there. I forgot to unmute. So, yeah, let me jump into the questions. Again, I really appreciate you talking us through some of that. There's a number of questions. You know, you've held various positions across public and private sector. So a lot of our audience here is thinking about what they want to do with their career. So let me ask you a few of their questions around just advice with the different sectors. So Haley's asking, what advice would you give to engineers working in the federal government? So from the federal side.
Even in the federal side, this continual learning. I was in the Corps of Engineers. I had jobs. I worked out at the Rock Island District and Little Rock District. We had a lot of the Mississippi River, locks and dams, those kinds of things. Going out on the projects, talking to the people, even the people that are doing the work. I can't tell you enough about talking to the people. Go slow, look what's going on, pay attention. We were at Little Rock on the Red River, and we were trying to build a lock, and don't usually get much snow up there, but we did, and we were out there that night with those guys watching and seeing what we could do to make it work. You learn by slowing down, paying attention. Slow down, watch what's going on. Okay. Even if it's not your project, if your partner at the next desk over or something's working on something interesting, see if they'll take you out there and explain to you what's going on. It's an opportunity.
That's great advice. Whether you're out there on an internship or like yourself, who've been out there many years, you notice something new each time you're on a site. So you do have to slow down and make sure that you observe those things. Let's see, Amit is asking a question. What are some of the differences that you found working between the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers versus your private companies like Granite and some of the other construction companies? Give us a little comparison and contrasting to those two organizations and what it would be like to work for.
If you're in the government, anywhere in the government, you've got to follow the rules. There's a book that says you do it this way. Either one of those jobs, though, you want to try, when you're looking for a job, when you're being interviewed for a job, I would say ask those people if you can go talk to the people that are in the same position as you will be, the young engineers. Ask them, are they being supported by their boss? Are they allowed to make decisions? Don't go for the big dollar. Go for the bosses that are going to take care of you and mentor you. That means you've got to ask questions in the interview process. Even in the Corps, even in the government, sometimes we just had to make tough decisions. And no, it's not in the book. You got to do it. You get a little bit more leeway if you're working for a civilian company. But a lot of the big companies, if you go for the big companies, they're publicly owned. They got to report to the finance people, and they got to send that in. They can be very sticky, just like the government. If you work for a family company, it's a lot different. There's a family company that I know of, a very large one, and their attitude is their people are going to work hard. They're going to put in the hours to do the job. And so when they need to take off, take off. I don't dock you for it. I don't keep you track of it. I trust you. They can do that when they work for a small family company. A little different that way.
Could you expand a little bit about your role opening up the estimating office for Granite? I think that's really interesting and a good example of a private company.
Well, in those days, Granite was a kind of a family-owned affair. Right when I was leaving, we went to an ESOP and we bought into it. But highway work had just about shut down in California. And that was Granite's organized with local area offices and then a big highway or heavy division that works anywhere in the country on big jobs. Well, the big highway work had shut down in California, and they're looking around and they're still working in Texas, and they came to Texas. There were a lot of California companies that came to Texas. I had excellent bosses. I had excellent mentors. Probably I learned more good practices from the people in the Granite that were estimating those projects because they went through it very carefully. I would sit here, there was another guy in the office, just two of us when we started. He's doing the concrete stuff, and I'm doing the rock and dirt. And we'd put the stuff together, and we would fly to Watsonville, California, and drive down to Watsonville, and we'd sit for 3 days and go through that estimate, talking about everything there. The difference was they understood that they'd gone into a different environment as far as the skill of the labor force. They recognized that. They were one of the few companies that recognized it. If they would have taken their production rates from California with union labor and put them on the jobs here, they couldn't build them. We did not have that kind of labor force in Texas then. And many of the other companies that came, they said, oh man, we can do this. And the labor's so cheap. Well, yeah, but you don't get the same productivity from it. You need to be careful about where you're working. Understand your labor force. This is a people business. Take care of your people, and your people will take care of you.
Excellent, excellent. Christina wanted to have you comment on your experience between working domestically and working internationally. You've been lucky enough to have opportunities in both areas. What did you find were the main challenges in each sector, either domestically or internationally?
I always had fun, if you want to know the truth. But I see, that's why I keep saying, slow down, pay attention, think about what's going on. Like I talked about Granite moving into Texas and realizing the productivity capability of the labor force. Companies, big, sophisticated construction companies from other places in the world came into Chile, and they built some of the major highways, what we would call the interstate here. Instead of paying attention to where they were, they built it like they did in their own countries. Well, you're sitting on the Pacific Rim, you're going to have an earthquake one of these days. You're going to have a big, bad earthquake. And they left out parts of the bridge, diaphragms, and the bridges turned and they fell down. They couldn't unthrow it. It's all about paying attention to the labor, the people part first, but also the physical environment. I like to say, most universities don't say in your engineering, you don't have to read the Iliad. Go read the Iliad. And what's the God tell Poseidon? Oh, you can tear down their wall with his water if you want. Well, did you see the hurricane that was hit over in Alabama?
Looks like
work in the Gulf Coast without expecting a hurricane. I'm sorry.
Hey, let's see. Michael's asking a question, kind of following up on domestic versus international. What about just travel in general? What advice would you have for someone who's on the fence of whether or not to leave their hometown for a job?
The job is about the people you're going to work with. It's all about the people you work with. And you're going to work hard, especially in construction. You're going to put in lots of hours. But if you work with good people, it's enjoyable. I have had fun. That's all I can tell you. I've had fun. But I have worked with people that have mentored me. I have made mistakes. I've made mistakes that cost my company $1 million. But you know what my boss said? I was pushing him. He didn't stop. He didn't think. But it was my fault. I was pushing him. That's the kind of boss you want. So it doesn't matter whether I'm working in Peru on a tunnel job. We're 2 miles down from the top and we can't understand why the rock's blowing up on us, or back here in the States on a small job. It's all about people.
Yeah. Yeah, good point. Let's see. Esther and Ethan have some similar questions here. Esther's asking, as a construction consultant, how is that different than a field engineer?
Let me tell you where I get it from. I worked on these committees and people knew my body of knowledge. And so when they had an issue, out of the blue, I'd get an email. Somebody says, hey, can you come here? Can you come look at this? The difference is usually they're in trouble and you're going to have to drop everything and go and do the job, think, hunker down, go through lots of reports. Keep records of what you do. Like we were talking about productivity, the difference between Texas and California. Keep blasting records. Lots of that stuff that's in, if you're using the equipment book, lots of that stuff is data from projects we worked on. All that blast data came from real jobs. It's the way it is.
Great. Ethan's asking about your original decision. Why did you decide to enter the construction industry as opposed to other fields in civil engineering, such as structural or transportation?
I was going to be, in those days they used to call it sanitary engineering. I think they call it environmental now. I took all those chemistry courses. I did all that stuff. The Army sent me to Thailand. They gave me an asphalt plant and they said, pave that road. All I knew about asphalt was it's black and it's hot when it comes out of the plant. When I came back from Thailand, they sent me to the Waterways Experiment Station. And there were 3 or 4 guys there that had gone through the master's in construction. You saw it was, I showed the picture there that was during the monsoon season, but we still had to work. We had to do what we could do. Take care of drainage for your project. Take care of your drainage. That's what they always tell you, even if you're doing design for the road, take care of the drainage. I just like the excitement of it.
Excellent, excellent. There's a switch gears a little bit. I want to talk about professional engineering. We have a lot of engineers on the line here. Both Vanessa and looks like Jeannie are asking questions about the timeline for the EIT, the FE, and PE. So could you just explain kind of how that process works about becoming licensed, and what advice would you give to our audience here on that topic?
Most states you can take that fundamentals while you're your last year in school. Do it, because it's all about that, all those courses you've been taking there. In fact, I've written some of those problems in the past. That's another committee. But anyway, take it then. Then you have to practice, each state's a little bit different, for so many years under a professional engineer. start studying. Study with your friends and go. About 4 of us that went down to Indianapolis and took the PE exam. We had been studying together. We were ready for it. We had people said, they're going to ask you this concrete problem about this beam and it's going to have a hole in it. Sure enough, they did. Take it as soon as possible. I don't usually put it behind my name. I don't usually flag it out there. But every now and then somebody starts pushing on about a problem. And it's nice to be able to put the PE down there and stamp that thing. Because we worked from West Virginia through Virginia down all the way to Florida. I was a PE in all those states, and I did it as soon as we started working in those areas. When I came to Texas with Granite, I got it here, did it in Arizona, and other places, everywhere I worked. Because I don't want somebody to say, hey, it's all wrong. It shows that you have qualified to a minimum standard, actually, you know. But also, you've got to work with people, under people that are PEs to get it. That's the important part about picking out where you go to work, and you're going to work with those mentors that are going to help you. But even studying for those things is good practice. It's part of that lifelong learning.
Yeah, I would agree with you. Taking the FE, the fundamentals of engineering, what used to be the engineering training exam, is good to do in your late junior, senior year for sure, while you're taking this class. Hey, Cliff, could you talk a little bit about, a lot of people just think being a civil engineer, professional engineer is about structural engineering or water, wastewater, but your books deal a lot with what construction engineers do, or what you might be using your PE license for with a contractor. Could you talk a little bit about some of those activities that a construction engineer would do?
I'll use the example of a student of mine now. She works for Caltrans, but years ago she went to Louisiana Tech, and then she went to Purdue and got a master's, and then she went to a large West Coast contractor and worked on dam jobs up in the High Sierra. And she was designing farm work. That's a construction engineer, but you got to know structures. You've got to know that concrete pressure against those farms so it doesn't come down. If you travel the interstate that loops around Washington, D.C., and those guys were building that bridge on the Alexander side, and somebody wasn't paying attention, and they're underwater. They're doing the base of the bridge, the column and stuff, and they're not paying attention to the amount of concrete they're placing in the forms. They dump more concrete in the Potomac River than they put in the forms before they realized what had happened. Those farm work, that's a structural engineering problem, basically. You need it. You need it. You need, if you're going to be in construction, some area of civil engineering with a lot of knowledge in that area. Structures, if you're going to work on bridges. I work mainly rock and dirt, so mine was in the geotech. I took every geotech course I could at Georgia Tech, and because that's what I like doing. I like moving rock and dirt. Be very strong in at least one area. My son works more with bridges, but even there, you got to do the other part.
Yeah, excellent points. Yeah, you can't be a specialist in all the different areas. And, thinking about all of the temporary constructions you talked about, geotech, excavations, formwork design, all of those things that are temporary on a construction site really do need engineering, and they're really exciting things to work on. So these are great questions, and I know you've dedicated a lot of your career to it. So yeah, thanks for sharing.
Let me add one point. I designed a work bridge one time, and I'm sitting in the office back in Ruston, and they call me up and say the bridge failed. Girders in upside down, concrete girders. The bars, the steel is not in the right place. That's what I'm talking about. Slow down and watch what happens out there.
Yeah, and that's observing, right? Yep, using your engineering judgment to observe when you're out on site is really, really important. Let's see. Let me ask you, you've done a lot of work, especially construction, also in your writing as well, in your textbooks about heavy equipment, excavators. Geraldine's asking, how do you perceive autonomous vehicles changing the industry around those specific dump trucks, excavators, those types of things?
We've been talking about them, and we've been actually trying them in mines for years now. And you probably go ConExpos every 3 years. You got to go back 15 years. They were running them in Arizona in the mines. We're going to probably get there. We've got sites where we need those kinds of vehicles. I don't know if they're completely autonomous, or I'm going to sit in my apartment in Washington, D.C. and run it in Utah or something. But we will get there. You got airplanes, but landing and takeoff. Oh, landing and takeoff. That pilot still flips that autopilot off. It's the same thing. And the vehicles, they do not see, they see the things for driving, for moving. Do they see the quality of the dirt that they're running on, the ground, things like that? If I go out and I look at a job and I'm looking at how the trucks go into the loading operation, is it confusion? Oh no, they're not running into one another, but I want them to cycle. I want them to go. I don't want them wasting time. I don't know how they're going to put that into the autonomous vehicle. They can put the driving for it. If I've got a large dam job, and there's one bidding up in Colorado right now, chief, up there on the Poudre River, it's going to be a tough job. And they could probably do, and they got some long haul. You could use an autonomous vehicle, but somewhere along that line, I don't know how we get it to the loader and to the dump exactly where we want it. But we'll get there. I might not be here, but they'll get there.
Good deal. Let's give you some big questions here. You know, some big thinkers in our audience here. So let's see. Jeannie's asking, what do you observe about sustainability in the construction industry? Materials conservation, environmental impacts. Maybe you could reflect about how that's evolved over your career.
I think the good companies practice it. They always did. They always did. I don't want to buy extra material and waste it and lose it. That's an extra cost. It's a good way to judge a company. In fact, I rode around this morning. I had to go to the post office, and I've been watching a couple of jobs right here in North Dallas area. And just by looking at the trash on the job, I know it's not well managed. If you go to a well-managed job, you won't see that. First, you're losing money on all that stuff that you just wasted. Second, somebody's going to have an accident, stumble on it, or a vehicle is, and you're going to have an accident, somebody's going to get hurt. It's not the lean construction is good. If you've taken any courses in that or read anything about that, that is excellent. That's excellent stuff.
Good. So Molly's asking about declining productivity in the construction industry. I know that's been a discussion over the years, that there's studies that show we have declining productivity in the construction industry, while things like manufacturing and agriculture increase productivity. Do you have any potential solutions for that? Or what are your views more generally on that assessment that we have declining productivity in the construction industry?
Carl Haas up at Canada has done a lot of studies on that, and every time it doesn't look good. And again, I blame it on people. I blame it on people like myself, if I don't go out there and pay attention to what's going on and expect a foreman that maybe doesn't have as much experience to run that job, nah, you're going to have different climbing. We did a nuclear waste closure at the Savannah River plant. Went down there about once a week, rode the job with the superintendent, and that superintendent, though, had been on jobs. And he's thinking, not tomorrow, he's thinking next week, what do I have to do to be prepared to deliver what we need to do next week? And that's what we talked about when we rode that job. Most good superintendents, project a job in Connecticut. They didn't think about how they were going to work next to a high voltage power line. You have to look at the environment of the work and be thinking. You cannot sit in the office right now. Go pay attention, go slow.
Good, good. You know, Raj is asking a similar question. You kind of started to discuss your perspective on health and safety, and he points out the high number of work-related deaths we see in construction. Specifically with your engineering hat on, your civil engineering hat, what can you do to make this a safer industry?
Hey, after y'all get off this show here, go on the web and look at the Hard Rock Cafe collapse in New Orleans a year ago now. How could you be the project engineer or any engineer on that job and have that happen? A worker on that project had taken a picture, I guess with his phone, and sent it to his friend and said, look at it, here's a reshoring tower that's bowed. It tells you it's got too much load on it. It tells you there's something wrong. I'm preaching about slowing down, paying attention, but also listen to that worker. I don't know what his capacity was, whether he was just a carpenter or a cleanup man or a janitor or what. But if he can see that, you're not going to see it sitting in front of your computer. You must go out on that job if you're going to deliver a safe project. You go to Washington, D.C., and you can see the Ronald Reagan building. Sits on 14th Street there, comes across the 14th Street Bridge. We're at TRB meeting one year, Christmas or January, and the manager on there says, hey, can y'all come out here and look at this? We're looking at 14th Street, and there's cracks in the road. And it doesn't take long to go look at his reshoring on his hole where he's going to build his new building, and you can see it's moving. It's just paying attention to what's going on your project.
Excellent.
I get disgusted at the industry sometimes when I see these things happen. They just embarrass me.
Yeah. No, excellent advice. Kind of finishing up on the bigger, broader questions. David's asked, he's pointing to your career and having lived and worked in so many different places, especially internationally. If you had to pick one obstacle that every construction professional should be aware of in our industry, what would that be?
Wow. That's a hard question.
Yeah.
I'll try to answer it the other way around. Like I said, if you're just getting ready to graduate, you're interviewing for jobs, don't look for the big bucks. You want to go and talk to them. They're asking you questions, you do this, that, and that. No. You want to talk to somebody that you're going to be working with. maybe the last new engineer that was hired. Ask them what they tell you. Do they support you? Do they mentor you? I have been very blessed, and I contribute a lot of my success to people that mentored me. My different bosses, whether it was a superintendent on a job or the vice president, you want to work with people that will help you grow, that will mentor you in the profession. That when you have a serious question about what you should do, whether it's technical or with your career, they're going to give you a good, honest answer. It's all about people. With friends, you can do the impossible.
Great. Yeah, great advice. And let's just continue, see if there's anything else you would give. Sophia's also asking that same question about what should she ask during an interview to gauge the workplace environment. I know you've said a couple of things. I think just the fact that you come prepared with questions is a really good thing for the interviews. But anything else you'd point out for Sophia to get a good feel for what a construction or engineering or design build firm would be like to work for?
Sophia, do your homework. Go research that company. You're probably going to be talking to somebody from human resources at least the first interview. If you get past that, then you'll probably go to the company or they'll invite you out or something. Some companies, though, send other people. I know big companies that do that, but be prepared. Know about the company, know where the jobs are, know something about the opportunity. And you can find a lot, for larger companies, you can find a lot of information. Do your homework. Do your homework. Like being a Boy Scout, be prepared. Be prepared. Ask about where do you think, ask that human resources person, where do you think that I would fit in? You have, everybody has their individual talents and can fit on the team. And that's what leads to success. Go to the 9/11. We just passed 9/11. Go see a picture of the Pentagon where the plane went in. And you know why they had time to get out of there? Nobody died when that plane went in. Because the nerd that was sitting in the back of the room the day that the contractor was talking about, well, we're going to put the blast windows in. He said, well, that's good. But is the structural design capable of keeping them there if it gets hit? And when they went back, it was not. They had to go back and redesign it. We need all those people on our team. I need that guy that's the structural brain to keep me doing the right thing. Find out where you fit in the team. How would you fit on their team?
Great advice. Thank you. We only have time for a few more questions. Time's flying by here. Let me ask one more just about kind of career orientation from our students' perspective here. Cheyenne's asking, I think I really like the way that this question's been asked too. What skills could an engineering student who's graduating soon, what skills should they cultivate in order to be a successful engineer in their career? I like that thought of, cultivating. What should you practice and how should you trying to be learning throughout to be a successful engineer or in the construction industry? So
I'm going to give you a different answer. Read. Read McCulloch's books. Let's see. You got The Great Bridge.
Great Bridge, yeah.
You got the Panama Canal.
Path Between the Seas.
Path Between the Seas. Anybody ever read Walden? Oh, why would I tell you to read Walden? This is a guy writing, 1850 or something, I don't know. He's a guy that left Concord and went and sat in front of this lake, this pond, Walden. But what he teaches you is the part that I've been trying to say right here. To go, slow down, and pay attention. When they were trying to build the first bridges across the Hudson River further north in New York City, what did they do? They did exactly what the guy in Walden did. They dug a lane for the ice on the river. They went out there and cut a hole in the ice, and then they could take a rod or a chain and drop it down there and find how deep the water was. If you read the Panama Canal, the first thing when Stevens took over, he stopped all the work and tried to understand the environment. He walked that 50 miles across there in the rain, in the slop, and everything, understanding the environment. Now, Stevens had moved rock and dirt before. He was good at it. When they got to the part that they're ready to build the locks, he knew nothing about concrete. He resigned and let the president find somebody that knew, the Corps of Engineers guys that are already built concrete. Understand what you know and what you don't. Read those books. They will enlighten you tremendously.
Great advice. Thank you. I'm going to wrap up with two questions about a part of your career we haven't covered, but it's what you won the Opal Award for, and that's education. So why did you begin teaching?
They always started me. The first thing they did after they made me an officer, I was a TAC officer. I trained officers. And then they had me teaching at CNGS. They had me teaching at the engineer school. They had me teaching. I like to see people succeed. I'm trying to write my own history right now. And I can't tell you, if I can stir you up and get you excited about this profession, I got a lot of students that they're high up in their companies. They're doing great things. And boy, that just tickles me pink. I like to see that. I've got a young lady that runs her own asphalt company in Chicago. I got a guy that's the senior vice president of an electric company in Los Angeles. There's another guy that was from Vermont. He didn't want to go to those big places. Like I said, you want to know where you want to live. He's way up almost in Canada, but he's running his own little company and he's as happy as can be. Find out what you like, what you enjoy. What I'd enjoy is seeing you succeed. I hope I can stir you up to read and think and slow down. Take care of people and they'll take care of you.
I have last question about teaching here, and I think it'll have to be our last question as well, looking at the time. Kayla's in a research-focused university. What sounds like she'd like to see a little bit more practice brought into class. So how do you bring practice into the classroom, having so much experience yourself? How do you make it exciting in the classroom and not just talk about theory?
I try to bring real projects into class. If we're going to do a mass diagram, we're going to do a mass diagram of a real project. Some research work we've done with other companies involved the federal government couldn't figure out why projects were costing them more money than they thought they should. We looked at those jobs, went through them, brought those into the classroom and let the students look at those jobs and talk about them. And it was a discussion more than the talking head, and just a guided discussion. If you go to a liberal arts university, that's what they're going to do to you. You're going to read a book and then you're going to have a guided discussion. They're asking you to think. I'm asking you to think. I'm asking you to look at the situation, the job, and think. Your research. You know, I was doing high pressure soil dynamics at Waterways and had to think about the types of soils we were dealing with. I don't care if you're going to practice in the field, you still got to think.
Excellent points. Well, Dr. Schexnayder, I really, really appreciate everything that you talked about. I'm going to just summarize a couple of things and then turn it back to you just if you have any final thoughts. But I guess I just wanted to highlight a few of the things that you said today and that I've learned from you. I mean, you've highlighted lifelong learning a number of times. You are shining example of that. You've never stopped learning and always writing and contributing. The other thing that I would point out is what you said about getting involved in committees. Being involved in the industry and improving the industry. It's not just good for continuing learning, but it's a good way to meet people. As you brought up before, you and I met on a bus in the middle of Kansas. I was lucky enough to sit next to you when we were when I was attending an industry meeting, and you told me what it was like to how important relationships were, and how important it is to remember people and work together. And because of that, I got a chance to work with you on the San Francisco-Oakland Bay Bridge and the Panama Canal and a bunch of stuff we've forgotten since then. But if I wouldn't have taken your advice and been involved in committees and reached out and networked with people, none of that would have happened. So I just want to say a sincere thank you just for the big impact that you've had on my career, and everything that you've reflected today has really honestly impacted my career. So I wanted to give you, just now that I've thoroughly embarrassed you, I wanted to give you a minute to close it out, and then we'll announce our winner here.
It's all about people. It's all about people. That's all I can tell you. And that's even the lowest guy working on the job. My son was working on the Q Bridge up in New Haven, Connecticut. And one thing we would do is every Thanksgiving, right before Thanksgiving, the last day, we go out there and fry turkeys for the workmen, the guys doing the work. And we take all the young engineers that were working in the office, and they were the servers serving the workmen. Now, that's just a thank you type thing. But the other thing is to go out there so that man that's doing the work, or that woman that's running that machine, knows you respect them and that you will listen to them. If they trust you, they will tell you what's going on, and you won't have that accident like in New Orleans. I mean, that's a shame. That's terrible. I'm embarrassed to see what happened. And the OSHA report says they didn't even follow the erection plan, and that's terrible too. If I'd have listened, or if somebody on that job, one of those engineers, had listened to that Hispanic, or got somebody to translate if he was speaking Spanish, I don't know if he was at the time, that accident probably would not have happened. But I don't think he had the courage, because they hadn't built that trust between them. Build trust with guys doing the women doing the work.
Well, thank you again. Excellent advice throughout, and I really appreciate you answering all the questions. I have a couple thank yous real quick. Jane Manalo, thank you for organizing this for all of us and responding to all the emails, everything. I want to thank the National Academy, Wayne Crew and Sandy Pittman, but all of the membership who makes the donations that make this possible, but they're really there to give back to you all. So please do use the resources on the National Academy website, and come back and see more of our National Academy Ask Me Anythings and some of the other resources that are up there. So I would like to congratulate Joel Hernandez from the University of Arizona. Thank you all for sticking with us and listening here. And do check out the YouTube channel if you haven't seen others. And Joel, we will be in contact with you. We have through your email to get you your scholarship from the National Academy. So thank you all, and be well and have a great night. And thank you, Dr. Schexnayder.
Had fun. Good luck to all of y'all.